Hmm.
Guess I can remove the mask.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Dan,
Hey,
Starting to feel like spring, and I'm A-okay with that.
I think a lot of us are in that same position.
Okay, I know tonight John Frederick will not be with us. We're a minute past our normal starting time. We have a quorum, so we'll call to order this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board. Roll call, please, Paula.
Stacy Coburn,
Present.
Mike Cronin,
Present.
Tracy Dujic,
Here.
John Frederick is absent, Gary Grossman,
Here.
Steve Kramer,
Present.
Darcy Long Curtis appears to be,
Present.
there she is, thank you. Tim McLaughlin
I'm here.
and Dan Richardson,
Present.
thank you.
Okay, if you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. You'll note the flag in the council chambers. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, guys, you have had the agenda mailed to you. I would accept a motion to approve or any additions or corrections.
Chair, I want to make a staff recommended change to tonight's agenda, and that would be to remove the action item. We will push that back to a future meeting. That is for the First Street right-of-way agreement. What I want to say about that very briefly here is that it is not your action to take after consulting with the city attorney. We would need to enter into an IGA with the city council, not with the Urban Renewal Board. But I can tell you more about that when we get to staff comment portion of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Do we have any other additions or corrections? If not, I would accept to a motion for approval as amended.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Darcy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by thumbs up. Opposed, same sign. And no fair voting there, Roger. Okay, next up is approval of the minutes of the February 16th meeting. Those were also mailed to you. If we have any corrections that need to be made, or I would accept a motion as submitted. Nobody jumping up with any corrections. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Thank you, Stacy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. All those in favor of the motion signify by thumbs up. Opposed, same sign. Okay. And with that, this is our time for public comment. I believe it says it's Deborah, but I know it's not. It's
You're right.
Chuck Gomez. And I believe Chuck wanted to speak this evening. So we'll recognize you, Chuck, name, address, all that stuff.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Very perceptive of you. And Chuck Gomez at the Granada Theater, 221 East 2nd Street. And this evening, I'd like to discuss for your consideration, for the Urban Renewal's consideration, a possible development of the parking lot immediately to the north of the Granada, behind the alley of the Granada Theater. I believe the city of the Dells would greatly be enhanced with an urban greening of that space. Let me expound on that I understand there's an archaeological concerns with subterranean development and things. And my game plan does not have any groundbreaking whatsoever. I would like to convert that lot into a 3-seasonal family-style walk-up drive-in. I've discussed the possibilities with both adjoining tenants and owners, landowners. Not only is Eric pleased with the idea, he would be willing to put a movie screen on the side of his building. So I think that's a good positive vote. Tony on the other side, the blue building, would be fine with it, but you'd have to discuss it with him. He seemed 100% amenable to the discussion. They both are slight property owners of that parking lot. But I feel we could put a evening movie screen, walk up for families, have a few raised garden planters of flowers and colors, and a beautiful greening of that area. The retaining wall to First Street could be covered with a banner that emulated ivy to start with, or possible ivy fences on that wall to get some sort of covering for that. The Granada is in a perfect position to offer the movies. We have a full liquor license and a full approved kitchen. We could offer snacks and grilled food, maybe drinks, a little kiosk type thing out there. And I would think it would be a positive development for that parking lot, as I have been maybe 7 years now involved with this corner, the Granada in this area. I have seen really no development or plans for development of that parking lot. These plans could be changed without much trouble at all, nothing permanent, nothing foundation or subterranean. People could even bring their lawn chairs to watch the movies. As far as sound abatement, they could dial in the audio of the movie on their cell phones. I would not even need a big loud PA out there. So if another bar down the street, either direction, is playing music, we wouldn't be interfering, and they really wouldn't be interfering with us. I would like to present the consideration that I would be willing to do all this and lease that property for maybe $1 a year. And I'd like maybe 5 one-year renewables and option to purchase it at the end of those 5 years. And until a better idea comes along, I think you ought to consider this. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. I'm open for questions if that's allowed, and thank you very much for this time.
Well, thank you, Chuck. No, we wouldn't have a full discussion tonight, but you're always thinking creatively. I'd like to direct Alice to work with you on the feasibility for that. Alice had something she did want to say, I think.
Very
Yeah,
good.
Chair, I had a nice opportunity last week to meet with Mr. Gomez in his theater with masks on, of course, and spacious separation between us. It was nice to be in his facility. I hadn't been in there before. I'd been in the gift shop a few times, but not this theater itself. So we did talk about this idea, and certainly willing to talk to Mr. Gomez some more following this meeting about this idea.
Good. Well, thank you. And we'll look forward to hearing a staff report back on that. Do we have anybody else that wanted to?
Thank you very much.
Pardon?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
You betcha. Thank you, Chuck. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak during public comment period? I don't believe so. So with that, we'll move on to our discussion items. First up is the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 urban renewal goals and priority projects. And I think Alice is prepared to discuss everything we need to know about this. And Chuck, you may want to stick around for this. Some of it affects your end of town.
Chair Grossman, members of the board, thank you. Thank you also for accommodating the special meeting time this month. I've been busy last few months since arriving, steep learning curve on all of the projects, but very pleased to be here. I'm in following our comprehensive financial analysis discussion last month. I felt this enthusiasm about the program. Are you hearing me okay? Okay.
Yes.
It indicated my internet was weak there for a minute. Just wave your hands. Someone wave your hands if I'm sounding funny, and I'll move around or something here. So I felt like we had a good session. I feel like we're in a position where we know how much money we have left to work. We're approximately 80% complete with air renewal funding as well as project capacity. So that means we have some good runway left to complete some things. And with that in mind, we left I think that was our February meeting, we left with that knowledge, and now we're preparing for budget. So rather than launching into the larger scale strategic planning effort that I had hoped to do, we need to get ready for next month's budget hearing. So with that in mind, I wanted to present and get your concurrence, at least the board's concurrence, with goals for the coming year, the coming fiscal year, which would begin July 1. And many of these things are already underway. But let's run through what we accomplished. I think it's worth noting that we did a few things, and first and foremost, we finished the sale and disposition of the Granada Theater to private owners, and I think that's something to be proud of, and especially proud of the new owners and everything that they've accomplished. So that was a big accomplishment for the year, and one of the city attorneys and my first big efforts working together as well, getting that closing completed. So we also committed up to $300,000 of matching funds towards a grant project that was brought before us by the North Wasco Parks and Recreation. And that would be to design and construct a segment of the Mill Creek Greenway Trail. We looked at redevelopment options for the Tony's building, and we made some good progress toward developing an idea as to where we want to move forward with that. And last year was a year of transition in the whole world, and so there was a delay in the rec building project, but we did spend some time through 2020 working through the issues that needed to be addressed as an agency responding to the roof collapse on that building. And there will be more to come on the recreation building. That project is starting to get some more momentum going toward it. So with that in mind, does anyone have any questions about the accomplishments or some of the highlights from last year? Okay, I'll move into the goals. I did have a chance to talk to board member Frederick this afternoon or this morning, and I was pleased to do that. I wanted to make sure that I heard from him if he was in agreement with these goals and priorities, and heard his feedback. He was pleased that we were setting some goals for the year, and also really excited about moving forward with strategic planning into the future. So we are underway with the First Street Riverfront Connection project. It's one that has had a lot of stops and starts. We've had the grant award since 2007, 2008, and I am determined to work with our team, the design consultants, as well as a project management team to let's get this project built. And so we're on a schedule as of now to have that under construction in summer 2023. More to come, more details for you, but we're working hard on this project. It's a team effort with ODOT and with our design team that's finishing up the design projects. Some of the complications, the next phase of work is going to be the right-of-way acquisition. So typically you finish the design documents or the design plans, and then you move into right-of-way to obtain, identify, describe, and obtain the easements and right-of-way that's necessary to build the project. So that's the phase we're going to be moving into soon. And then after that, we'll put the final touches on the bid documents and get it out to bid. So because we have so many players involved in this, we have federal money, we have to work really hard and work diligently with ODOT. And sometimes that can be a frustrating endeavor, Fortunately, I feel really pleased to have a project management team helping us with that work with the Bend office of ODOT. We're in Region 4 and we have their attention, and they're giving us, despite the delays we've had with this project that are mostly caused by the Dalles over the years, I think we're going to get this thing built. I feel very pleased about it. So that's a really high priority project. You made your first public statement about the agency-owned property at 2nd and Federal Street, and that's known locally as the Tony's Building. You signaled to staff that you would like staff to prepare an invitation to bid to demolish that building and make way for a redevelopment site that would provide more housing and mixed use opportunities in the downtown, in the heart of the downtown right there. And there have been previous goals about identifying and maybe building some plaza improvements on the block of Federal Street between 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. So this is a really strategically nicely located piece of property that really could have some wonderful opportunities associated with it. So that work is underway, and we are doing, as I said, I said last time we met, Josh and I have some work to do with Josh Chandler, our associate planner, and I are going to be working on the underground storage tank research and possibly mitigation, and then also the asbestos removal. We need to take care of this work prior to demolition. So those are some things that that will take a couple of months now as we proceed. So the other thing that I believe we need to do, we continue to get bites, I would say nibbles of interest from folks out there who are interested in building housing. And I think we need to do a better job. And that means it's on me, it's on us to better market our incentive programs. We have a very, very good program of incentives. I don't think many people know about it. And if they do, we aren't marketing it very actively, and I'd like to do a better job with that. So refresh the current programs, maybe bring back some others. Also look at the vertical housing zone that we've already created in the downtown, make sure that people are aware of that opportunity. What that does is offer some tax abatement for housing that's created above the ground floor of existing buildings or new buildings in the downtown area or in the zone that's been established. So we want to spend some time on that this year. We continue to accept payments on grants and loans, on loans that we've offered. So we want to continue to collect those payments and track the progress of those. And the rec building project is one that we are going to, the developer is going to be moving on very shortly here. So that project is one we're going to be watching closely. It's led by the private sector, but it's one that we still own the building officially. And we hope to, just like the Granada site, we hope to complete some milestones with the developer and get that asset sold to the private sector so that we can realize some new uses and get some new vibrancy in our downtown, particularly in that block. And then lastly, certainly not least important, but I think finishing up that strategic planning effort that we've started would be important. We've set some goals for this year that will guide our budget discussions next month. But I believe we have about 8 or 9 years left in our agency's life, maybe less. And it will be important for us to prioritize what we want to do with the funds remaining. So that's some work we can be doing in the next few months here, and I look forward to it. So with that, I would love to invite your questions, comments, feedback, and ultimately what we're hoping tonight is that you can give us enough feedback so that you can move to accept these highlights and the goals in some fashion so that that can guide our budget discussion next month.
Questions and discussion?
Chair Grossman, we're going to talk about First Street, its status a little bit later in the meeting. Is that correct?
I can, Chair. I just removed the right-of-way agreement item, but I can under staff comments. Or I can right now, whatever you choose.
Yeah, I think if there's any discussion, we should have it now.
I guess I would ask briefly, Director Cannon, can you give us the status of the First Street project, which we all know has been hanging around quite a while?
So in the last time that you officially heard a report on this project was, other than my very brief informal comments, was September 15th, 2020. Our consultants, our design consultants, the engineers from KPFF joined us and highlighted the design that's currently being considered. It's at 75%. I've seen a plan set that says 95% and another one says 75%. In any event, we're pretty far along on the design on this project, and we wanted to accept some comments and get feedback from the board at that time. Didn't hear a lot of feedback, but basically, in short, I'm not really prepared to show slides, but in short, the project has which once was a connection from the Lewis and Clark Park to an undercrossing at the railroad and First Street to a new plaza space that would have been at the Washington Street block between 2nd and 1st. That project has morphed into a First Street streetscape project where we would improve the pedestrian crossing at the railroad at Union Street and the extent of First Street all the way to from Union to Laughlin would be improved with new sidewalks, ones that aren't hollow underneath, and a new, that's scary actually. We do have sections of that it's an old sidewalk with a lot of tripping hazards, but a new sidewalk that would be about 12 feet wide and a new streetscape, a new water line, new stormwater improvements. And the water line in there is, much of it is clay and it's over 100 years old. So that'll be improved. We will also see at this time, the proposed design shows a one-way travel for autos and parking on the south side of the street which would be a reverse of where it is today, and a bike lane, which would be an eastbound bike lane, one-way bike lane on the north side of the street. So with the option that it's designed in a way that if at some point the board is interested in, might be interested in having two-way bike travel, a wide enough bike lane on the north side, it could be a two-way cycle track at some point in the future that can accommodate that redesign pretty easily. So we would need to jump through a few hoops with the public, but also with our property owners, with the community, also check in with our engineering department who has an adopted, transportation system plan that we need to make sure we're in compliance with the transportation system plan for that street as well. So that's where the project is. We're in design. Like I said, we're about to move into the right-of-way phase and then finish up the plans and get it out to bid. So those are the next steps. And I know Board Member Richardson has some questions about this design and may be interested in having some more discussion.
It's true. I would like to have some more discussion. I think we have a couple of new board members, and I don't want to delay for something that's already been delayed for a long time, but I also don't want to rush into a bid phase prior to really thinking as a group about what we want out of that. I personally think it would be a shame not to end up with what we want in the end, and I would lobby at least want to discuss pretty thoroughly the idea that we have a wide enough bike and pedestrian lane there that, you know, allows two-way traffic. Essentially, Chair Grossman, perhaps you could offer some guidance on how we could have that discussion in a fruitful manner. Maybe at next month's meeting, we could have a review of the project as proposed. We could consider amendments, have slides and visuals and such.
Yep, I believe we could put that on next month's agenda, Alice. I think it would be good to almost start with what it originally was supposed to be to where it's more, because that's a big chunk of change that's already happened in this project. So we'll look for that discussion in April. Mr. Kramer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This does raise a lot of other questions. The agency doesn't own those city streets or any of those city sidewalks. That's another piece that we're going to have to discuss. Is the city going to be at the table on this discussion? And then, you know, being a little sarcastic with this next question, who's going to be responsible for moving the RV park that has been come to play on First Street? So we've got a lot of issues that have come to light, and as Councilman Richardson has brought up, there is a whole lot to this as we move forward with this particular project, and so when we talk about agency-owned properties, those are some pieces of properties that the agency does not own, and we're going to need to have permission. So thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer, and good input. I think it will be a good review and a good discussion, and you know, certainly timely that we get to it right away, because it has been held up for some time. So that will give us some meat and potatoes for next month. Any other discussion, questions about the goals as presented? If not, I would say that we would need to move ahead with a motion, but it would need to be somewhat amended to include discussion of First Street in the first item. So I think with that as an additional piece to the first item, we could entertain a motion if somebody is feeling like they would be prepared to make that.
Chair, I could offer something that might simplify this, that we could pledge as a staff to complete the discussion portion this fiscal year so that we don't have to amend the first one very much. We would be completing the plans, cost estimates, and so forth, but the discussion around this design element, we can pledge to complete in the next 2-3 months, and so have that done. So may not need to amend that bullet item.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my thoughts on this is that we can do this on consensus, and as we move forward with the budget process, then we can formalize this within the budget process, and take Director Cannon's suggestion to have this the information move forward quickly. And I think that if we just give a thumbs up on consensus and track it through the budget, I think we should be able to do that. Thank you, sir.
I think that's very wise input. Commissioner Kramer. Is anybody opposed to taking that approach where we will be discussing the project list next month in budget? So I'm not seeing any opposition, so let's give a feeling of consensus. Those that feel in good consensus for that, thumbs up, please. Good, we have everybody on board, so thank you very much. And thank you, Alice, for your work on this. And a lot of this has to do with organizing with the staff that we have and the help we can fund for this next year. And we'll have our hands full with that and hopefully maybe get some new plans and strategic plans. So we'll move on to discussion item number 2. That being a discussion on the governance. Steve Kramer has brought this up a number of times, and we've kind of kicked the can down the road rather than having a discussion. So I will turn it over to Alice for staff background and maybe Steve, your input on your concerns.
Yes, Chair, I probably know the least about the history here of anyone on this meeting, but with that being said, from 1990 to 2016, the agency governing board consisted of the mayor and city council members. They acted as the governing board for this agency. And there was an urban renewal advisory committee that acted and provided recommendations to the governing board at that time. So there were 2 entities for the agency to manage. From a staffing perspective, that was a heavy lift for a small agency. Can you tell what my opinion might be? But in any event, it was a workload issue. I have worked in 2 or 3 other agencies. All of them have had an urban renewal advisory committee that provided recommendations to a governing board. And what I will say about this one thing I like is there's one board in terms of workload, but I will certainly do whatever whatever direction this group takes us. And it doesn't, board member Kramer, that in no way gives an opinion about the composition of that governing board. It's just easier to manage one board rather than 2 from workload perspective. So with that, there was a change made in 2016, and I probably know the least about that. So it'd be good for board member Kramer and Chair Grossman to really discuss why that change came about to morph into the board composition that we have today.
Yes, so
I want to give some background on your concerns.
yeah, thank you, Chair. I am somewhat a little disappointed, Director Cannon, that we did not have our offline conversation, but you found that you had some historical information that you felt that our meeting was not needed. But all due respect, I would like to know who your historian is on that. And I felt that conversation between Chair Grossman, I, and you should have taken place. And but with that, we'll move forward. As we see in the memo, that the board that is composed of 3 city council members. We left out the county on this one particular list, and but it goes to my comments that I made earlier about First Street. It is, most of this is all city driven, and the history behind all of this with the advisory board, I thought we were doing a really good deal, doing some good work at the time. And we did have a council member at the time that didn't like to attend an extra meeting. So he lobbied to move this to the present format that we have. And, you know, as an advisory committee, that's not a board. We're just a group of folks that are trying to do the greater good and move it to a governing body that has full responsibility of the fiscal end of this. And I just don't, and I'm kind of getting off base here, but I don't see putting the fire and rescue, the parks and rec, the port, and the county into this as the responsible agencies for all of the work that's being done with inside the city limits. And so that's where my heartburn is with the governance of this particular board. And I feel that it's time that we either move forward or y'all tell me to go, that you're okay with the way things are, and that'll be the case, and I will move along forward with it. But I think that the decisions that were made in the past were the wrong decisions, and we need to revert that back to having the fiscal agent be the elected representatives of the city council. Thank you for the time, Chair Grossman.
Thank you, Steve. Others that would like to speak to this, either pro or con. We'll get to you in a moment, Mayor. I want to see if anybody on the agency board has any discussion that they would like to make. I did receive input from John Frederick by email, who felt that the current board process is what he feels is the correct one. Stacy.
You know, Chair Grossman, I don't have a strong opinion, but I do recollect and appreciated back some months ago when Mr. Baker, when he was on the board, when he shared, as well as another member of the fire, I can't remember, agency board, shared the direct impacts that this urban renewal agency had on their boards directly and their available funds. And the part that I appreciated about that was that it reminded us, as we make decisions, that we need to be looking at this at a long-term positive effect, so that when someday this is finished, that those improvements that we do improve their tax revenue. And I appreciated that reminder. I appreciate their views on the group, because they come at it from a little bit different place, almost like it's a personal investment to their board. And like I said, I don't believe so strongly, as much as I just appreciate the fact that of hearing their voices as part of a constituency that is truly being affected by the decisions that were made to freeze their revenue stream.
Excellent observation, Stacy. Mike, did you want to speak?
No, I don't think I do. I was just preparing just in case, but I don't, it's probably not the best spot for me, so I'll respectfully pass. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else feel that we should look further into returning to the previous process that we had? I'm not seeing much field for that. Mayor, you had some input.
Chair, Board Member McLaughlin was raising his hand a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Tim. I'll be right with you.
Good. Let's hear from the mayor.
I have two questions, actually, no comments. One is, one for the historian. I guess that would have to be you, Chair Grossman. And the other one is for Mr. Kramer. Was the advisory board made up of the same members that the board is of now? In other words, was there, who made up the old advisory board up until 2016?
I can't remember. Steve may remember who we had. It was a different structure and a smaller board, as I recall, Steve. We did have Parks and Rec represented. I don't believe we had the fire district represented. Tim would remember as well, I think.
I was there, yes. And it functioned as an advisory, but the decisions came to city council. And basically, I think it was a reaction. This was formed from a reaction of decisions made by city council. And it was over a development of a hotel in the downtown corridor. And I think that's where it started, but there was a shift. At that time, there was also the beginnings of the Google developments and the taxation and the development that had an influence and an impact over the makeup. I did oppose the formation. I voted against the current, but the reason that I did, it was a non-elected group of folks that were making financial decisions, and there was no way to recall or people that were not accountable to the citizens as an elected official, because we can always be fired by not being reelected. But anyone outside of that purview could make decisions that didn't fall under that same overview. So I think those two things affected. Now, as I review now, I can see that having more voices in the decision making, because it does have an impact on those agencies, is probably not a bad path to take. However, I still have an issue with, and Mr. Kramer also brought this up, is having an elected officials making decisions. So that is the two sides of this argument is, and I think legally, apparently we formed it and it met all the legal requirements, but ethically, it's just being accountable to the citizens. And I feel that that may or may not be happening. That's my take.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Well, unless Mr. Kramer has some historical perspective, it doesn't sound like anybody knows the answer to my question.
What was that? The makeup of, I saw the makeup. It was a smaller group.
Yeah.
It was made up mostly of downtown businessmen and women at the time. Correct, Gary? I think, who else was on there? There were several people that are no longer on there, but it's just changed in the makeup, the restructuring, and also the ability to make financial decisions. Those are the two changes. It changed the representation and it changed the decision-making process.
Can I ask Mr. Kramer the question I was going to ask then?
Yes.
Please.
Steve, do you have a recommendation as to, if you got your way, what would the advisory board be made up of? Have you thought that through? Or?
If I had the magic pixie dust, yeah, absolutely. We would go back to what we had and make it up of the business sector and have a little more input from that side of things, because the other side of this coin is in 2019, I went to the assessor's office to check on all of the good things that we've been doing, and we're not putting more money on the tax rolls. We're not gaining any value with what we're doing. And so the other side of that coin, I get the makeup of or I understand the process for urban renewal to get rid of the blight, but we're not we're not getting the other side of it. We're not getting the return that we should be getting and to be putting back into those districts as Ms. Coburn was stating earlier. And so there's a bigger discussion to go on here instead of just a little bitty governance that we're working on here. We're not capturing the dollars, our investments that we're putting out there, and we're not getting those returns. And with the fire district and the parks saying that the termination of this organization wouldn't make a big impact to them, I understand what they were saying there. But on the other side of the coin, we're supposed to be making an investment on those dollars that we're putting out there, and we're not doing it. And so that's why I feel that putting the responsibility on the fire and rescue, the port, the county, the park and recreation district is irresponsible at this time for us to be doing so. And I think that the city council, who is elected to take care of all of those dollars that pass through the city chambers, should be the ones responsible for this. So happy to do this offline and so we can really cuss and discuss. But, you know, that's my overview of all of this. And hopefully I answered your questions, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'll have to say that if you look back in the history, the reason why in recent times we haven't been getting a return on property is because the former agency, which was the city council, got us into a lot of property that didn't allow us to do what we needed to do. So I don't see us returning back to a system that got us into the trouble in the first place.
Chair Grossman.
Yes, Darcy.
Thank you. So I came on right as we switched over to the current system. So I was elected and appointed. So I never served under the previous one, but I did quite a bit of research when I was put on, and there are only two options for urban renewal in the state of Oregon because they are strictly outlined in the ORS, the Oregon Revised Statutes. And the one is under the city council, and the second is this independent board that we are now. And I agree that the city council structure is what got us where we are now. And we've been trying to kind of dig out from there. I think that there are a number of reasons why we haven't yet, but I feel like we have a new director with Alice Cannon. And I also feel with you as the chair and some different perspective. I feel like things are changing, but we've also had some very bad economic times during this, which we've been pretty much hamstrung for our choices. And I really think it's important to have these other agencies serving. And the fact is they are elected. You know, Stacy is elected, Mike Cronin is appointed, but it's an elected position. We do have citizens who are not elected. I believe it's one or two. Okay, so you and Mr. Fredericks. And so, you know, I mean, I understand Mr. Kramer's frustration, but I feel like we do need to keep our eye on the ball, and the fact that city council doesn't have as much incentive to worry about anything other than blight and things to make the downtown area better. But all the other agencies, they want a return on their investment. And I think that's an important focus for us to maintain. Thank you.
Darcy. And there was some concern in the previous form. I think to answer your question, Rich, the previous advisory board, there was a loose structure. It was appointed by the mayor and not by its own structure. And so during that time, I know one group that had a real concern about being cut out was the fire district. Not so much on a tax basis, but not being able to put input in to projects that we were looking at, the cost and the things that would affect that. So for me, it's been good to have the input from all of the taxing districts. And it's, I think, that's holding us particularly accountable to making sure we have a return through urban renewal in terms of property taxes for everybody concerned. Tim.
Since the inception, I've counted 4, maybe 5 different planning heads of the planning department. So that has brought inconsistency and change in recommendations and change in vision. And I agree that with the addition of Alice that, I have confidence in the planning and I think we're doing good things. So I think the underlying conditions were a return on investment and those taxing districts that were concerned. There were also, there were decisions being made that people didn't have all of the information when those decisions throughout, because we didn't have the lines of communication. We were basically separated and got input, but not direct communication between the advisory and the city council. So there was a barrier for communication. So that added to this issue. So that gives you a little bit more of a historic inconsistency from change of personnel and direction. And the planning head of the department had a high impact on the direction that we moved.
I'd forgotten, Tim, how much and there was kind of a divide and conquer period that separated the advisory committee and the agency.
And when this was started, this was before my time, there were many things that were already developed and in the works before we even came along. So once you get something rolling along, it's really hard to change it. And so we accepted the overview of some of those projects that developed many years before. So changing the direction of the train once it starts, tough.
Absolutely, Engineer McLaughlin. So any other discussion or input concerning this? At this time, I'm not sensing a strong desire to go into a process of reorganization. If I am incorrect with that, please give your input now.
Well,
thank you, Chair, for that summary. I think that since I brought this up, I'm willing to put this a little on hold and continue some thought process and some conversations offline and get a better grip on where folks are with me, and we'll just move forward there. Thank you, sir.
You betcha. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Yes, Councilor Tim.
I heard a report that the life of this agency is a finite. And when is that determination from this agreement or this?
Alice, I believe it's the 2029, I think.
That's correct. Our current debt obligation has us paying off all remaining debt in 2029. There may be other revenues that come through that we could still keep the agency alive, such as loan repayment and so forth, to expend those final dollars. But 2029 is our current debt obligation.
So we're looking at 8 years to continuance of this agency as it exists. And the only other option we have is returning to the way it was. That's our only 2 choices.
For the most part, correct.
All right.
something for the agency to remember too. When we talk about the life of the agency, that is the current life of this agency, and that's controlled by our debt and the need to pay off that debt. That doesn't mean that sometime in the future we might identify a large enough project that we actually found a need to find more financing and extend the agency. It's not a discussion right now, but that's exactly what happened in 2009, is we ended up extending the life of the agency to do some of the things that unfortunately got us into trouble. So hopefully it'd be a better decision if we decide to do that in the future. So with that,
Chair,
yes, Alice.
I just want to say one thing to Board Member Kramer. I meant no disrespect by not having the offline meeting with you. Absolutely. I just found myself in a very busy place and decided that we would move forward. I made the recommendation that we just move forward with having an organic discussion today. However, would it benefit to have more conversation, Mr. Kramer? Should we talk some more about this and about governance topics and board topics, the two of us?
Thank you, Director Cannon. There was no disrespect intended here on my part, and it's just that we'll, as I stated earlier, I'll do some more one-on-one with everybody, and we'll move forward. And based on what I find out from the one-on-ones, then we'll see if I resurface this or not. So, but I'll definitely keep you in the loop and definitely look forward to future conversations. So thank you for all you've done on this. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Alice, you're up with staff comments and other project updates.
Let me just talk a little bit about, I think I've already described it a little bit about why I removed the right-of-way agreement, the First Street right-of-way agreement from board authorization and board action tonight. It's because, as Board Member Kramer pointed out earlier, the fiscal agent for the city and the one who has the ability to enter into an IGA is the city organization. So we will need to take intergovernmental agreements forward that relate to our work with ODOT on the First Street project to City Council for their approval. That being said, once we finalize this agreement, I'll bring it to you for your recommendation to the City Council. In short, this agreement is the draft agreement we have in front of us now sets aside $200,000 to fund the right-of-way phase for this project. This number, this value is consistent with the value of the right-of-way phase for the past few years. I did receive an updated cost estimate for this phase of the work, and it's now bumped up to $250,000. So we may be changing that amount once we get it to City Council. But rest assured, we do have the funds in the budget, in the proposed budget and in the current budget to cover that cost. And I'm also really pleased that we may be able to stay on budget or below budget with this phase, because we did some good work on the right-of-way phase in the earlier days on this project. So there may be some documents that are already in place that will make it possible that we don't have to do so much work. So stay tuned. Next time we bring it back, it'll be for your recommendation as opposed to your approval. And with that, I'm trying to see if there are other projects. As I mentioned, we are working with Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid on their rec center building. And I see Mr. Carpenter on the meeting here. Really pleased with recent progress that they're making with moving forward with their project. They do have a building permit request in with the city for our consideration. They did last spring, in spring of 2020, receive Historic Landmarks Commission approval for their facade design. So it's just a matter now of working through the project details and project schedule with you as a board in the coming few weeks and months. We're going to move pretty quickly. I think we might be back as early as next month in a public session to have you consider a new addendum, which would adjust the schedule for this project, just in response to the pandemic that we've all been facing in the last year has delayed a lot of things. But I know the developer's intention is to get this project built and keep it on schedule. So that's my update, Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have that I haven't addressed already.
Any questions for our director? Tim?
How is Union Pacific? Are they being good players, or are they being, I know there's not much we can do about Union Pacific, but are they being cooperative in the First Street development?
Chair and Board Member McLaughlin, we have not entered in, since I've been here, we haven't had any updated, refreshed conversations with the Union Pacific Railroad. I guess I feel hopeful. It's always difficult to work with railroads.
Yeah.
Talk about accountability. There are no elected officials that are accountable to the public with railroads. And it's just by virtue of the history of those organizations, it can be a long and protracted process. That being said, I'm going to be hopeful because we do have good documentation of agreements that we reached back in the day. So I would say in the 2010 to 2012 era that we can point to. And I guess the complication that we have on this project, and Board Member Kramer pointed it out, not only does the right-of-way belong to the city as an entity, but it also belongs a big chunk of the First Street right-of-way is Union Pacific land. So our street sits in Union Pacific Railroad. So that'll be an important consideration, though, like I said, I think we reached some prior agreements that will gain some momentum for our project. And also we're not proposing difficult undercrossings or things that are going to be as controversial as they were maybe in past days. So
thank you for answering that.
Any other questions for Alice? Okay, we'll move on to board member comments and questions. Do we have any comments or further questions from board members? Seeing none at the time.
Hang on. I was just letting everybody go, Chair. I just wanted to thank everybody for their candid conversation this afternoon, and appreciate you all for what we're doing, and thank you all. Bye-bye.
Well, we thank you to Commissioner Kramer. He's not only a county commissioner, but Steve goes back historically in the port and economic development here. So always good input. So with that, we will recess to executive session in accordance with ORS 192.660(2)E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. I will remind members of the press who may attend the executive session that they are not to report on any of the discussion during executive session. So with that,
Chair Grossman.
Yes.
This is Dan. Is it traditional for us to extend the courtesy of attending executive session to our mayor? Or do we need to discuss that if not?
That is something that we decide per executive session, Dan. If Mayor Rich wants to attend, does anyone have any concern? If not, Rich, you are invited to attend.
Thank you. Could I have Paula to send me a link?
yes.
Paula, could you send a link to Mayor Mays, please?
I don't have the ability to do that from here, but I believe Director Cannon will forward that.
Izetta will send a link to Mayor Mays, so.
This is your executive session.
I
All right,
can't.
Alice.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You bet. I don't know what's in